Well, good morning, everyone. As we're wrapping up this series, the movies, let's take a moment and look back at what we've learned thus far. We started off with a classic movie called Cars, and it was about pride and humility. And D.L. Moody said it best, be humble or you'll stumble. And that is so true, isn't it? If we're not humble, we're going to stumble. The next week we looked at Avengers Infinity Wars, and it reminded us that we need to cooperate. We need to cooperate with God. We need to cooperate with each other. And when we do, we are stronger together than we are individually. And last week we saw Hotel Transylvania 3, and as David McGee says, we should be more concerned with reaching the lost than pampering the saved. You know, we're not on a cruise ship, are we? We're on a battleship. And our battle is not against flesh and blood, but we can be victorious, can't we? Because greater is He who is in us than he that is in the world. This morning we're going to look at The Incredibles, number 2, and it focuses on a family as they navigate both the superhero life and their relationship with each other. And it's a vivid illustration of how we pass on to others who we are. In this case, Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, they have superpowers. And guess what? All three of their kids have inherited that from them. And it's important who we model our lives on and who is the example that we follow. Let's watch a clip from the movie.
Superheroes are illegal.
We want to fight bad guys. I can be bad guy. It defines who I am.
We're not saying it happened. What? Help me bring supers back into the sunlight. We need Elastigirl.
Bye, sweetie.
I'll watch the kids, no problem.
That's not the way you're supposed to do it, Dad. They want us to do it.
I don't know that way. Why would they change math? Math is math. Math is math. All over Dusseldorf. Dussel's autocracy.
Pride is so heavy, they're drooping.
Believe parenting is a heroic act. Done properly.
Parenting isn't easy, is it? And oftentimes kids, they catch the wrong thing from us. And they imitate us where we don't want them to imitate. Chris Morgan says this, and it's the first thing in your sermon notes: be the example or be made the example. I mean, families, we can pass down good things or bad things, can't we? We see this truth in the life of Abraham. In Genesis chapter 12, verses 10 through 20, Abraham is concerned. He's concerned because his wife is a smoking hot fox. And he's worried that he'll be killed because of that so that someone else can have her. And so he lies. Well, he tells a half-truth to protect himself. And he does it, it worked out so well the first time, you'll have to read that. It didn't work out at all. But he did it again in chapter 20, verses 1 through 18. And then in Genesis chapter 26, his son mimics exactly what his father did. Not only his actions, but even his attitude. Isaac is worried that he might get killed because of his wife. And so he does what his father did. And the interesting thing to me is he wasn't with his father when his father did it. Isn't that true that our kids copy us? I mean, they sometimes it's adorable, right? And sometimes we just shake our head and we say, oh, their mother taught them that, right? Isn't that what you guys do? Yeah, all the ladies are saying, yes, you do. So, it's important who we imitate. And the first question we have to ask, because here's the thing, we're going to do it. Even as adults, we imitate others, don't we? I mean, that's why fashion is so popular and why I said, I'm glad I'm getting older because some of the things that people wear these days, I mean, like the skinny jeans. Aren't you looking forward to that day when you can put on the skinny jeans with your suit and it's like, and that, I don't know where we were, but recently we were somewhere and every guy that was there that was younger had on dress shoes, but no socks. It's like, that's not right, is it? But it's the style, and people copy that. So the question we have to ask, because we're either going to be the example that people can follow, or we're going to be made the example. Oh, don't do that. Is who will you copy? Who will you copy? Because you're going to copy someone. 1 Corinthians 11:1 says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. That's kind of heavy to me. Follow me. I remember a long time ago, our church had a teen church choir, and we were on our way to Miami to sing, and one night we were in Cincinnati, Ohio, not far from the fountain. Do you guys know the fountain in Cincinnati? From WKRP? Yeah. And the church that was supposed to host us, their pastor died suddenly, and so another church took all the ladies, but us guys, we had to stay at the church. And I had a problem back then. I don't have it anymore. I haven't had it. Pam's experienced it a few times, but thankfully I've outgrown it. I would sleepwalk. And this particular night, we're laying on the pews sleeping, and in the middle of the night, I jump up and I say, follow me, men, I know where I'm going. I would not have been a good person to follow that night because I had no idea where I was going. I didn't even know I did it until the next day they told me about it. They always had fun with me doing those kind of crazy things in my sleep. But who are you going to copy? Follow my example. That's heavy because that means I have to be on the right path, don't I? I read a story one time about a funeral, and the pastor, instead of riding in the hearse, which often they do, drove himself because the funeral, the cemetery wasn't far from his home, and so he's right behind the hearse and everybody else is following him. And as they're driving out of town towards the cemetery, his house is up on the left-hand side. And guess what he did? What all of us have done, right? Unconsciously, he turned into his driveway. Saying, follow me, it's a heavy burden. But he adds to that, as I follow the example of Christ. When we follow the right person, when we imitate who we should imitate, It's good. And let me say this, you will copy the people that you surround yourself with. So we need to choose carefully. Then, not only who you copy, but don't copy. Wait, I just said, listen to what it says in 3 John chapter 1, verse 11. Dear friend, don't copy the evil deeds of others. Follow the example of people who do kind deeds. They are God's children, but those who are always doing evil will have never seen God. We don't have to follow the destructive path of others, of older siblings, of a sports hero, even our parents. Don't copy the evil deeds of others. I find it so difficult when you're on the road. Not to succumb to road rage, right? I mean, everybody else is doing it. It's just like when you're on the interstate, how many of you recently have been on the interstate, on the tollway or something, and have exceeded the speed limit? Confession is good. And why do we exceed the speed limit? I mean, here I am going 65 in a 55 zone, and I rationalize it how? The number of people that are passing me, or honking their horn at me, even though I'm in, not the very far right lane, but in the second. I mean, hey, everybody else is doing, let me, and I almost feel like if you don't, you're going to get run over. But we don't have to copy the evil deeds of others. Researchers have pointed out an interesting thing. They call it over-imitation. And it's a very human-specific quirk. In studies they've done, dogs and chimps are taught to open a box and to retrieve a toy that's in there. They copied the teachers exactly, as long as it proved efficient. So in other words, if the teacher grabbed the box, turned a button, and the door opened, and they could get the toy, they would do it. But if the teacher were to put something stupid in there, like running a feather across the top, the dogs and the monkeys wouldn't copy that, because it wasn't efficient. It didn't mean anything. But when they did it with children, they copied every detail, even the pointless brush of the feather. Mark Nielsen, who did that, says animals are focused on getting the job done. Humans seem to almost forget about the outcome and copy everything they see. Parents, your kids will imitate you, right? Kids, your siblings imitate you. Our friends imitate us, don't they? So here's what we need to do. Realizing that, we need to follow the example of Christ, and we need to model the behavior you want to see. Model the behavior you want to see. Ephesians 5, 1 and 2 says, imitate God. Therefore, in everything you do, because you are His dear children, live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. He loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. Have you ever done something that you wished you hadn't done because somebody else did it? You know, not somebody else did it before you, but somebody after you. Someone younger than you picked up that habit and you said, oh man, I wish. And sometimes we deny it, don't we? We say, well, they didn't learn that from me. But we need to model the behavior that we want to see. And that means that we need to commit ourselves to living a life of obedience to the truth. And where do we find that truth? At the movies? No. From our neighbors, from our friends, from society? No, we find it in this book, don't we? Every word that is in here is true, and it's useful to help us to grow and to mature. And so we have to commit to living a life of obedience. Obedience to the truth. Imitate God, he says, in everything you do, because you're his dear children. Live a life filled with love. That's the second thing we need to commit ourselves to. Love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is sacrificial, is it not? I give up things that I like because I love. And we need to commit to growth in Christ-likeness. So, are you modeling the behavior that you want to see in others? Or, you know, there's that age-old saying, isn't there? Do as I say, not as I... We need to throw that away. Because people aren't going to do as we say, they're going to do as we do. And so we can either be an example or we can be made the example. The choice is us. We've been working on a memory verse, and I think it's up. Did I put it on the screen, Phil? I don't remember. Yeah, Ephesians. If you'd put that up. This reminds us of who we're to imitate and how we're to imitate. And so let's just read it together. I am not meant to remain as a child. I am meant to hold firmly to the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ. Ephesians 4:14 through 15. That should be the goal of our lives, to grow more like Christ each and every day. So who are you watching? And who's watching you? Let's pray.